If you could stop sharing your screen.
Yes, I can do that. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, and with this, we'll come to our next speaker of this morning session. And the next speaker is Jean-Loup Rault. And he's a professor at the VetMed Uni in Vienna in Austria. His research interests are in social behavior, especially in pro-social behavior. And I think we will hear about this in his presentation, but he also works on animal-human interactions, and in his research he integrates endocrinology and neurobiology as well. So I'm really looking forward to hearing your presentation.
Hello, Sandra. So, okay, I'm trying to fix two things. First, my mic, I think, was not working perfectly with Rebecca. So is it better now, the sound?
Your volume is very low, but I can change my volume.
And the second thing is trying to share my screen, yeah?
Yes.
So let me check. I tried, but then I could not see anything anymore. So I think my pointer, sorry, I have other screen connected. So if I try to just have one screen, because it gets dark on my side, I just get a dark screen. Is the sound better now?
Not really.
Okay. Okay, so that is not working this way. I mean, otherwise for the presentation, I think you guys could share the one I sent before, right?
And Niklas, Ann-Kathrin, can you share Jean-Loup's presentation?
I can do that. Give me a second.
Oh, perfect.
I'm trying again, but
okay.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, and can you see it full screen or just in the presentation mode? Just
the presentation mode.
Okay, let me try now. Can you see it now?
We see your notes with that. So yes, now it's better.
So now it's okay, right?
Yes.
Okay, and you can hear me fine?
Yes.
Oh, I have to scream. Okay, good. Great. Sorry for that. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the organizer to give me the opportunity to present today. I'm going to talk about this development of what we call the joint log lift task in pigs. And so I first want to acknowledge my co-author as well that have heavily contributed to this collaborative work, or as I say, cooperative work, Irene Kamerlink when she was still with us at VetMed Uni, but also Sebastian Gaumont, who is now at ETH Zurich, and Marek Spinka at the Czech University of Life Sciences. So why study cooperation? Many of you must know that there have been extensive research over the last few decades from the field of cognition, trying to understand, and I'm not sure if you can see my mouse when I indicate. So many study from the field of cognition, trying to understand the proximate mechanism of how animals cooperate, what are their capability in terms of cooperation, and whether they understand what they're actually doing. On the other hand, they also have been people interested in it from a more of an evolutionary point of view, trying to understand why cooperation or other type of prosocial behavior have evolved in some species and not in others. And these usually are coming from the field of behavioral ecology. But there really has been not so much interest to try to understand the welfare implication of cooperation or other type of prosocial behavior. I reviewed the literature in 2019. This was a review in Applied Animal Behavior Science, looking at what we knew about prosocial behavior and cooperation and other type of prosocial behavior in domestic animals. And indeed, I was astonished to find out that we knew relatively little. And also there had been a lot of research in primates, in rodents, or in other species. There's not been so much in domestic animals, and especially not so much in farm animals. But it potentially has a lot of implication in terms of, for example, trying to understand whether animal in good welfare condition make it conducive to act prosocially toward others, or whether actually acting prosocially will have positive welfare implication. And at the same time as this review came out, there was also another review from Massen and colleagues, which was specifically on cooperation. It was very interesting. Also, this review was mostly cognition oriented. They made a lot of highlight to the fact that, for example, we knew little about the implication for affective states and for other welfare aspects. One of the problems as well is really that it's not so much that there have been a null of negative finding, is that people have not really looked at it so much in farm animals. There have been some tests that have been broadly used in other species. The one you can see here called the string pulling or rope pulling task. This has been used over 160 species, I think, tested in over 160 species, but not until recently has that been investigated in goats. I think I remember Christian Nawroth, for example, talking about it a few months ago. So this type of research is relatively novel in farm animals. And one of the difficulties is also that we do not necessarily have a validated paradigm or test to actually look at those prosocial behavior. And so this led us to this project here when we had two aims. The first one was to come up with a task that we could consider to be biologically relevant to the animal. And so this is basically trying to formulate the question in a way that the animal are likely to understand, something that makes sense to them. The second aim was that we really wanted to have a task that we could present to a group of animals, letting them choose when do they want to perform the task and with whom do they want to interact in this task. So this was this free access at group level ID. And so you can see here in this free representation what this John log leaf task box look like. And basically we have the log in red that is in a box. And the box is self-contained. There is two openings to the box in front of it where the animal can put their nose or their head. So for the pig, they put their snout. And they're able to manipulate and lift this log up and down. Below the log, there is two food bowls which contain food reward. And so basically on the left-hand side with the A, you can see the apparatus in a resting position. On the B, you can see when one animal actually lifts the log on one of the two sides. And on the position C, you can see what happens when both animals successfully lift the log. We have a magnet at the top that then will lock the log in place. And then the animal will access the food reward. But they do not get a food reward if only one of them is actually lifting the log in the way that the log moves. So we had this box. We use a relatively simple ethogram to actually record the type of interaction of the animal with this apparatus. So we had touch, which basically just means touching the log. Attempt alone is one pig actually trying to lift, but is alone. Attempt together means that there are two pigs trying to lift, but they are not necessarily coordinated in a way that the log is horizontal and therefore it does not attach to the magnet when it's not properly horizontal. And finally, we had successful lift, which means they both pigs lift the log and they lock to the magnet. This was the only behaviors that we actually rewarded in the task. Now I have a short video to show you what it looks like in practice. So this is the final apparatus. We have gone through quite a few prototypes in the development of this task, but you can see, and it's playing in loop. So you can see those two pigs interacting with the log and locking into the magnet, and then Irene is rewarding the pigs for their action. So we developed this box. You can also see that he has some wheels, so we are able to move the box from group to group or pens to pens. And so in the last study that I will show you the result, we tested 8 different groups of pigs, each group had about 12 pigs in the pen, and we'll play the box for 30 minutes per day for 9 consecutive days. And this was a testing session. And so the pig can really choose to come and interact with the box whenever they want within these 30 minutes. They can also decide who is on each place within this apparatus. And this graph represents basically, so these are the 9 consecutive testing days on the x-axis, so 9 days. And this represents the average amount of events per pig over this 30 minutes daily test session. So there are those 4 behaviors I just described before. You see that in terms of the touch, this was quite high on the first testing day, but it quickly dropped out on subsequent days. Attempt alone gradually decrease over the course of the testing days. What we saw is attempt together, so this light green color, gradually increase, and successful lift, the only behavior that was actually rewarded, similarly increased over the course of the days. So what was actually interesting is that the pigs are not interacting more or less with the device, but they're actually switching their approach and type of interaction with the device from what we call like individual behavior, so acting alone, to joint behavior. So either trying together or successfully lifting together over the course of the day. But on average, they interact with the box roughly about 27 to 30 times per session. So they're already switching their approach to the problem rather than trying more or losing interest overall. But there was also big differences between individuals. This graph here shows you again over the course of the testing day with the orange dotted line, how many pigs in terms of proportion of pigs in the group, how many pigs were successful over the course of a single day. And you see that from day 3 onwards, we basically have 40% of the pigs that are successful on any given days. When we do the cumulative proportion over the course of all of the days, basically by the end of our 9 testing days, 2/3 of the pig had been at one point successful in this task. But there was large variation between individuals in terms of being successful or not. Also, each individual was relatively consistent across the day. We also look at dyadic association. So which 2 pigs were actually interacting with the log at the same time. Here you can see, again, across the testing day, you can see with the cross, the average success per possible dyads in those group. And this is relatively low. So it's about 1 success per 30-minute testing session. But what we found actually is that only about a quarter of the possible dyads actually interacting with each other. So we saw some non-random association that there was only 1/4 of the dyads that were possible observed in the task. We also found that also, and all the non-success or the non-occurring dyads were given a 0, which brings this average down. But there are some dyads that were extremely successful, which basically will succeed about 16 to 20 times per testing session. So about every 2 minutes, they will actually succeed in the task. We also look at the number of partners that one individual pig will have in being successful in the task. And you see that it is gradually increasing over the course of the day. So they start with about 2 partners at the start of the study, and at the end, they are interacting with about 4 partners. Also, there is a lot of dyads that are happening much more frequently, associating much more frequently than others. And therefore, there seems to be some proficiency in the task linked to which dyads is trying. We also look at whether there was some individual characteristic or social characteristic that could explain the difference between very proficient pigs here in this task and non-proficient pigs. Here we were quite limited because we only actually had video recording of testing sessions, so only during the testing time and not outside of testing time. And we also only had the field of view of about 1/3 of the pen around the device, but not the whole pen in the camera recording. But we nevertheless analyzed what we could see on this video in terms of the pigs and what was happening between pigs. And I have symbolized here in green what was positively associated with success in the task, and in red what was negatively associated with success in the task. So what we found is the latency to interact was positively associated with success, meaning actually that it is a negative correlation because it's about latency. So basically the pigs that were quicker to interact with the device were also the ones that had more success in the task. And this may reflect an aspect about the curiosity of those particular individuals. However, we found that the frequency of touch with the log, which is an unsuccessful behavioral interaction with the log, was negatively correlated with lifting success. So if we think about it as a measure of persistence, it's not necessarily that the more persistent pig was the most successful, but it rather seems that some pigs are better at it than others, irrespective of how many times they actually try. We found a positive correlation between success and the number of partners, which may be explained because the more you're successful, the more you may be likely to have more than one partners. We found some interesting relationship with social behavior, but not necessarily in the way we predicted. We actually found a negative association between success and social positive behavior. So the pigs that were more successful show less nose to body with other pigs, which may be because they are quite occupied by the device. They show less of this behavior, but they also show more social negative behavior. And this was mostly physical agonistic interaction, physical displacement, or mounting. And this was both in terms of giving and receiving this type of social negative behavior. So it seems that the pigs that were more successful here were more aggressive. We don't know necessarily if they were the most dominant, but at least they were more aggressive, or they were more able to sustain aggressive interaction from conspecific and stay there at the device. And we definitely saw that some pigs sort of monopolize the device in the group, which we think could be sorted if maybe we were testing for longer, because at one point those pigs lose interest and other pigs get a chance to have a go at the device. We're also very interested to see whether the pigs actually show any type of evidence of understanding that they need to have a social partners to succeed in this task. And here we found that the pigs actually lifted more when another pig was present on the other side than when there was no partner present, which will go into toward an understanding that you need to be two. But we also found out that most of the lift success were not synchronized. So they were only synchronized in a quarter of the attempt and unsynchronized in 3/4 of the attempt, by which we mean that one pig will basically lift the log and kind of stay there, and another pig will come later and lift the log as well, which will make them successful, but only in a quarter of the joint behavior where the lifting really synchronized at the same time. So we have mixed evidence here on this last point of whether the pigs or how much the pig understand about the task. And so basically, if I come to the conclusion, we were successful to actually develop this paradigm, which is based on a social foraging task, which for pigs makes sense. It could also make sense for other species in terms of having to do this joint action to access both a food reward. And it relies on what we call an obligate strategy, meaning that the only way to succeed is to work jointly. And it's different from other type of cooperation task when, for example, the animal may be able to derive a lower reward if they act alone. We think it's also closer to what happened with cooperation in nature, when animals often cooperate when the only way to get what you want is to work together and you cannot get it individually. So you can think about group hunting, for example. You cannot hunt by yourself, so you have to be in a group to hunt a larger prey. In terms of our pigs, we found that some pigs were successful from the first day. And as I said, there was a large inter-individual variation. And I think I don't see it as a problem, but as actually an advantage, because they really create opportunity to understand why do some pigs succeed and not others. We also found that there were non-random associations. So they form preferential social association in this test, which again, I think is great because they allow us to conduct further research to try to understand what are the social factors that are conducive or inhibiting to succeed in this task. So I think this opens a way to look at welfare implication in terms of the social environment of the animal. And overall, it gives us the opportunity, by the way this task is designed, to actually really give potentially the opportunity to put the device in the pen, letting the animal actually choose when do they want to have a go at this task and with whom do they want to work. We still have to test further whether this is actually what people will call true cooperation, which is usually defined as showing that the animal has an understanding of the social nature of the task, the need that they have to have a partner to succeed in this task. And as you may know, there's a lot of debate about what is cooperation and what do you need to prove to call it cooperation. So we are a bit careful at this stage, but we are also conducting further trial to look more into this aspect. With that, I will move to the last slide for question, just a little highlight about the main research axis of our institute as well here at the VetMed Uni. And I look forward to discussing with you, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for your presentation of this really clever experimental design, Jean-Loup. And I already see the first hands raised, and the first one I think was Christian Manteuffel.
Yeah, hello. First of all, thank you for this very interesting talk. But one thing I didn't get, I didn't understand, why were the animals motivated at all to perform this task if only the joint performance was rewarded? So what was the initial motivation? Was it just novelty, or what was it?
Yeah, I didn't describe the whole thing. What we do as well, before we start the testing session, we place the box in the pen with the log lifted already, so they can access the football, and they learn that there is either chocolate raisin or apple pieces in these footballs. So we do that for 2 times 10 minutes on the day before starting testing, just to ensure that they associate the device and what is below the log with the food reward. So as you say, we found out in the first trials, we did not do this step, and we found out some pigs actually were naturally interested to just interact with these. Pigs are very investigative and neophilic. So they were just interested to come and just play around with this log. But what we found out as well is if they were not succeeding with this joint action, some of them will start losing interest. And they really will keep interest if they found out that once in a while they can succeed and get the food reward, right? Sometimes it's also if the other ones are successful, then that reinitiate the interest, because like, okay, I'm not successful, but those guys are getting some food from there, so I need to try again. But it's a very good point. We found that it is very sensitive to, I think, the ability to at least some pigs in the group to make the association that this action is associated with some kind of nice, tasty treat. Okay, very interesting. Thank you.
The next question comes from Christian Nawroth.
Hi, Jean-Loup. Thanks for the great talk. I have a question that probably digs into more the things that you anyway want to continue using a similar paradigm and relates to the understanding whether a partner is needed. During these experiments, was it the case that pigs appeared to wait for some other pigs to approach the apparatus, or did they try themselves, did not succeed, and then another pig went by, or did they simultaneously arrive at the apparatus? And if the first thing happened, so the pigs were waiting, did you see something that could be referred to recruitment behavior? So they were basically showing behavior to attract other pigs to interact with the device as well.
Yeah, it's a very good question. We did not really see waiting occurring, or only I think a couple of times, but not necessarily something that will be providing strong evidence. It's also difficult because we were on this 30-minute session. They are interacting a lot with the device. So there's not a lot of breaks for the pigs. There are always kind of some pigs trying it out. But as you said, this is the idea. So we did not see waiting, but we saw that they are more often going to trial when there is another pig with them than when they're alone. And it's also, I think, a learning process, right? From the start, they are kind of trying all kind of things. They are trying these different behaviors. And after a few days, most of them figured out, okay, it doesn't work if I'm just by myself and touching or not lifting. So it seems that some pigs understand it, some pigs do not, and they keep trying by themselves. But as you say, our next step, basically just to disclose what we are going to do next, is to look at this recruitment. So can we, if we place them with a device and another partner is not there, are they going to go and recruit another partner, which will provide strong evidence that they are understanding at least that they need to have a social partner in this task.
Next question, Maria.
Hi, Jean-Loup. Thank you very much for this very interesting talk. I might have missed it in the beginning, but I was wondering if you did you present the sort of evolutionary background for why pigs should possess these abilities?
Yes, it's a good question. This is something we always have in the back of our minds. I mean, pigs show different type of synchronized behavior. So from the first day of life, they nurse together, and they really need to all align and nurse the sows in a synchronous fashion in order to get the milk. And then there is other type of evidence in wild boar, for example, that they do seem to cooperate and work with each other when they forage as a group. And there is also some example for communal rearing in pigs, when they will take care of pigs from other litters. Also, a lot of those are often anecdotal evidence. And therefore, the idea here is, as you say, what is the background for the pigs to really understand that they are cooperating? I think also we may not give them a lot of chance in the indoor housing system to actually show some type of cooperation, because there may not be any benefit to cooperate. So I think we have to also ask ourselves, yeah, what happened in the wild, and can we see whether they are understanding that they need to cooperate or not? Like, for example, going back on the waiting aspect, there was an interesting study in ravens, when they also showed at the beginning they were not waiting, but over time the raven learned that they had to wait for the partner because they could not solve it by themselves. So it is a complex process about what is like some kind of, if we can call it, natural behavior, and what can also be learned by the pigs.
Thank you. And one final question, please. Can I ask for a quick question, quick answer? Question comes from Luigi Bacciadona.
Hi, nice to meet you. I mean, it was a nice talk. I have just a question. I mean, how you managed to avoid any kind of manipulation of the food box? So I imagine they are quite motivated to get the food, and you have the same pig that are monopolizing the food, and the next pig will actually just be there because the space is quite actually narrow, and they just basically, they do not cooperate, but they just synchronize the movements of, if I put my head inside the box, I will get the food, and I will wait until the other pigs will come, and regardless if it can be even not another pig, essentially, so just a waiting behavior to get my food.
Yeah, so as you say, for example, we look at synchronized, what we qualify as synchronized lift versus non-synchronized lift. And synchronized lift is they really come at the same time, and they are lifting the log in a horizontal way. So they're really synchronizing their behavior. Versus non-synchronizing was one of them come, as you say, one of them come, lift, and then another one come later or come just after, but they're not lifting at the same speed. And we found that only in a quarter of instances, these were synchronized lift, and in 3/4 of the instances, they were not synchronized lift. We did not see any evidence of displacement. I think one of the reasons for that is because we are still doing the reward manually. And so the person is giving the reward, and it's in a quick way. So there is no time for another pig to come and displace. Also, we know that pigs do it in electronic saw feeder, for example. They can try to displace other pigs from the food. But I think by the way we give the reward right now, there's not really a possibility to cheat and steal the reward from someone else. But if we wanted, for example, to automate it, this could be a problem we have to think about.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And yeah, thanks for this nice presentation and good discussion. And with